Wes Halmin friend and welcome to yet another video. It is always pleasant to see that people are coming to their senses years and years and years after you started saying the very same thing. Well then, welcome my dear friends. Of course, everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, and if you've been following my channel for quite some time, you know that I am quite fond of exaggeration and hyperbole, which means that these things, they don't really make me angry. It's just amusing to see that here and there you see an article where the quote-unquote journalists of the mainstream internet media are suddenly coming up with ideas that they think are quite new and that they have discovered America. No, actually not. You know, I have been kind of revolving my channel around the idea that we do not need any more adaptations or prequels or sequels or spin-offs or rip-offs, as I like to call it, because really it seems that 90% of everything that we get today, as far as the audio-visual media, films and TV shows, anything on the streaming services and so on and so forth, is an adaptation of one source material or another, or a continuation of something that was made decades ago, and everything is being made into a franchise. I have grown to despise this particular word, but once again, I'm repeating, if you've been following me for at least a couple of months, I have made multiple videos on the matter, whether they were focused on The Lord of the Rings, or Star Wars, or comic books, anything. And then you read something like this from Collider.com and you are just, yes, thank you, Captain Obvious. So I am not going to go into depth as far as this article goes. I will leave a link in the description down below, should you want to check it out for yourselves. But, you know, you don't really have to read it, because it only says the obvious things, that The Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson was one and done situation. It is one of the best adaptations of a work of art really made in the history of movie making, and it cannot be repeated. The lightning will not struck the same place for the second time. Absolutely not. Not even Peter Jackson was able to copy his success when he made the Hobbit trilogy. And yes, I know there was a lot of studio involvement, and first it was supposed to be made by Guillermo del Toro, and there are bright moments in the Hobbit trilogy and so on and so forth, but still, it was not able to repeat the success of The Lord of the Rings, and we don't even have to think about The Lord of the Rings exclusively. Just look at anything else. Look at Star Wars and the success of the 6 films by George Lucas. He, being able to make 6 movies in the space of, 25 years or whatever it was, is a tremendous success and shall never be repeated, and it can't be repeated. Look at what's Disney doing now. They are desperately trying to cling to the old stuff and just milk it more and more and more, and they are trying as much as they can to repeat the success of George Lucas. Well, they will never do so. They have even tried to establish their own catchphrase, which they succeeded to a certain extent. I'm of course talking about "this is the way." What do you think they are trying to do there? Well, of course they are trying to have their own "May the Force be with you," or "I have a bad feeling about this." And in this case, yes, they have to a certain extent succeeded. I see a lot of Disney fans and normies quoting it and repeating it all the time, and even having it tattooed on their bodies, which is quite scary. Alright then, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the same, They took already established characters that have been around in many cases for decades, since the 1960s or the 1970s, when they were first published by Marvel Comics, and they succeeded with their Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1 and 2, and now they can't stop, because they are always thinking about that huge success of Phase 1 and 2, and now they are continuing, but they are trailing the footsteps of the Marvel Comics, what they started doing about 12 years ago. getting rid of the good old established characters and replacing them with cheap Chinese knockoffs. Like Thor was removed and Jane Foster became Thor. Wolverine was off, and X-23 became Wolverine, and the same thing happened to Tony Stark, and Riri Williams became Tony Stark, and so on and so forth. And it's all very, very boring. It has, grown very, very old very quickly, and people are fed up to the back of their teeth. And of course, Hollywood is going to be trying it over and over and over and over again, because I don't know. I mean, there will be people praising those piles of donkey manure as mostly as I call them, the 12 Twitter psychos on the internet, who are, for example, absolutely all over the Rings of Power. So, who is all over the Rings of Power? Well, either simpletons on Twitter or Facebook. It's really mainly Facebook that I see. It seems that there is the biggest conglomeration of simpletons, and then those shills, those fan sites or fan groups on the internet that were invited, those months ago or even a year ago to Oxford to have a free dinner and free screening of like a rough footage of the first 2 episodes, and they got a goodie bag with a promise of clout and exclusive interviews, which. As far as one of them, I'm not going to name any of them, but it's just one of these fan sites, quote unquote. They dared calling themselves the Tolkien fan groups, and I have not seen one single interview with an actor or a showrunner or a screenwriter or even a guy or a gal who was taking care of the catering. So, did it really pay off? And now when they are posting something about the Rings of Power, like a speculation of the second season, I see that the video or the live stream does not have many views. This was a fleeting moment. This grand thing that Amazon had been boasting about was just one of the current things. Just one of them. Just one of the many. It was just yet another She-Hulk. It was yet another Velma. It was yet another the new Seth Rogen's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those things come and go. They will pass very, very, very quickly. And those who decide to shill for it or cling to it will inevitably fail. Because these things do not have the chance to obtain the status of being legendary. Like everything Tolkien wrote, or the adaptation that Peter Jackson made over 20 years ago. So, the gist of this video is, I've been saying that for the longest time. Thank you, Collider.com. Alright then, let me know in the comments down below what you think, my friends. And, Namarie.